this video, we are going to be considering the ECG, the electrocardiogram, and we shall as well consider the changes that happen in the heart during a complete cardiac cycle. First of all, a cardiac cycle, it's more of the sequence of activities that happen or that occur within the heart during a complete heartbeat. A complete heartbeat may be made up of complete cardiac relaxation, that is atrioventricular relaxation. It will be made up of systolic, or rather systole, of the atrium, and it will finally end with the systole of the ventricles. When the heart contracts, we may call that, or we may consider the heart being under systole. And when the heart relaxes, we can consider it being under a stage of diastole, in simple terms. But before we see that, looking at the continuation of the previous video, where we were talking about the cardiac cycle based on the heart structure and the initiation of the heartbeat, one thing I wanted to note out is that even though the heart is natural pacemaker, the sinoatrial node located in the right atrium depolarizes and repolarizes at around 90 times a minute, it doesn't mean that our hearts will pump at 90 times, or rather 90 beats a minute. No. Some other factors come in and control the heartbeat. These factors may be due to the endocrine system involving hormones. Hormones like adrenaline may increase the heartbeat, and some other hormones may reduce the heartbeat. But at the same time, also nervous influence may come in. In nervous influence, the heart is connected to the brain, to certain centers in the brain, the cardioregulatory center in the brain, the medulla, by a set of nerves. We have the parasympathetic nerves that inhibit, reduce the rate of heartbeat, and we have the sympathetic nerves that increase, or rather stimulate, the rate at which the heart is pumping. The heart is rhythm. In the parasympathetic, the heart is connected to the nervous system by a nerve called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is actually the largest nerve in the body. And this is connected to the sinoatrial node, that is the heart's internal natural pacemaker. And it is also connected to the AV node, the atrioventricular node. One can get more explanation about this when they watch the previous video. And these inhibit the heartbeat. They restrict the heartbeat from it being to 90 to it being around 60. In an individual who is extremely physically fit, it can even be less than that. Now, the heart is then connected to the sympathetic nervous system, which actually increases the rate of heartbeat. The sympathetic nervous system has a link to the sinoatrial node, the SA node, to the AV node, the atrioventricular node, There is also a parasympathetic nerve connecting to the atrial walls, that is the atriomyocardium. And we also have another sympathetic nerve connecting to the ventricular myocardium. That's all. We can now consider our electrocardiogram. So, during the cardiac cycle, first of all, the cardiac cycle is basically involving the contraction of the atriums first, followed by the contraction of the ventricles. So the atrium contract when the ventricles are relaxed, and then the ventricles contract when the atriums are relaxed. But here we are going to be starting from, so this is our electrocardiogram. We have the P wave, Q, R, S, and T, and each of them represents something. Each of them has something it represents, as we shall see. So we are going to start from the P wave. During the P wave, here, we are starting from this point, the P wave. The P wave is representing the charge picked from the heart, the muscles connected to the heart, when the atrium are contracting. So what is happening here? The sinoatrial node has depolarized, and a charge has been sent across the atriums, and the cardiac muscles in the atria are contracting. So a charge will be picked off the cardiogram. A charge is going to be picked off. So you will see that charge. And during this stage, when this charge is picked off, we shall have some flat line somewhere, a constant line. It is going to go back to zero. At this stage here, what is happening is that the charge is being collected up by the atrioventricular node. The charge is being collected up by the atrioventricular node, and it is going to be sent down the way. It is going to be sent down the way to the ventricles. When this charge is sent down the way to the ventricles, it is going to make the ventricles contract. So a huge charge is picked off the ventricles. The ventricles are going to contract. But at the same time, at that moment, the atrium is repolarizing. But this charge of repolarization of the atrium may not be seen on our cardiogram because it is being outweighed. It is being covered up by the strong charge picked up when the ventricles are contracting. After this ventricular contraction has occurred, we shall have some moment of time before our ventricular repolarization occurs. So what is happening here is, at P wave, we are having atrial depolarization. From QRS, we are having ventricular depolarization, but the atriums are repolarizing, even though the graph of the atrium cannot be seen because it is being outweighed by the charge of the ventricular depolarization. Then at T, we are having ventricular repolarization. ventricular repolarization. Now, we want to look at it when we want to consider our ECG, the electrocardiogram, in accordance to the state of the semilunar valves, to the state of the atrioventricular valves. So, here we are having valves. We are going to compare the ECG to the state of the heart sounds. We want to compare also the ECG to the state of the pressure within the heart chambers. To the pressure within the heart chambers. Pressure. And we shall finally conclude by comparing the ECG to the volume in mils of blood in the ventricles. So, volume of blood in the ventricles. So, we are going to be starting, we are going to draw a certain line where we shall start from everything. And we shall be starting from exactly this point. Let's start from there. Now, at this point, here, we are saying that this one, first of all, this, you should know that this is just a continuation of this. Where this is ending, this is where it starts from. So, this graph keeps on repeating itself. So, here it is just a continuation of this. Where this one was ending, it's where this starts from. It's just a continuation. So, at this point, we are saying there is no charge. There is completely no charge. There is no depolarization and there is no repolarization in the heart, in the complete heart at all. And the heart is said to be fully relaxed. Both the atria and the ventricles are relaxed at this point. And at this point, a sound dub is heard. Dub. When is the sound dub heard? First of all, what causes? We have two heart sounds. We have the lab. Normally, they are meant to be two heart sounds. Whenever you listen to your heart using a stethoscope, expect to hear a sound lab, dub, lab, dub. Lab being louder and dub being a little bit more soft. So it will be lab, dub, lab, dub, lab, dub. In between there will be a momental pause in between the lab and dub. So, when is this sound lab and dub heard? First of all, the sound lab is heard due to the shutting close. Whenever they are shutting close, our atrioventricular valves, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles, that is both the tricuspid valves and the mitral valves, or rather bicuspid valves. Whenever they are being shut close, that is when the ventricles start contracting. Whenever the ventricles are contracting, the atrioventricular valves are shut close. The valves between the atrium and the ventricle, that is the tricuspid valves on the right side of the heart, and the mitral, or rather bicuspid valves on the left side of the heart. So when these ones are being shut close, they make that sound lab. It is due to prevention of regurgitation. They are preventing regurgitation of blood preventing backflow of blood to the atrium from the ventricles during ventricular contraction. We can call it the isometric ventricular contraction. So, that's when the heart sound lab is heard. Then, the heart sound dub is heard when the heart is under relaxation, complete relaxation. When the atrium and the ventricles are both relaxed. Here, it is just immediately after the ventricles have contracted. When the ventricles contract, they push blood through our arteries. That is both the pulmonary artery and the aorta. And immediately after that, the ventricles relax. At the same time, our atrium are relaxed. So, in that state of relaxation, the pressure within the ventricles lowers. When the pressure within the ventricles lowers, blood tries to undergo backflow. Blood in both the pulmonary artery and in the aorta will try to come back to the ventricles. As it tries to come back to the ventricles, as it tries to undergo regurgitation, the regurgitation is going to be prevented, the backflow is going to be prevented by a set of valves, known as the arterial valves. Valves in the arteries, arterial valves. That is both the pulmonary arterial valves or pulmonary arterial semilunar valves and the aortic valves. We can call them the aortic arterial semilunar valves. So it will prevent that. So as that regurgitation is being prevented, it will shut those valves close. The blood will compress onto those valves, shutting them close. So that sound is going to be made. Dub, dub. So it is loud. As the ventricles contract, they close up the atrioventricular valves. Then, after the contraction, the ventricles relax, blood tries to come back to the ventricles, so the arterial valves are closed shut. So creating that sound, the dub. So it is loud, dub, loud, dub, loud, dub. So it is in such a sequence. So here we are having both the atrium and the ventricles relaxed. There is no depolarization or even repolarization within our heart. Not at all. No depolarization and no repolarization. So here the heart is completely relaxed. So the blood in the aorta and in the pulmonary artery will try to undergo regurgitation. It will try to undergo backflow. As it tries to undergo backflow, it is trying to come back to the ventricles. It is going to shut the arterial valves, that is the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. When they are shut close, they will make that sound dub. So that's why we have our heart sound here, dub. So dub, the heart sound will come in dub. And when that sound comes in dub, it means the arterial valves have been closed, or rather we can call them the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves have been closed. So these semilunar valves have been closed. So we can see semilunar valves. So at that state, the semilunar valves are going to be closed. They are going to be closed by the blood which is trying to come back to the ventricles. They are going to be shut closed. So the semilunar valves are going to be closed. But in this same condition, as the semilunar valves are being closed, semilunar valves are being closed, we are seeing that our atrioventricular valves at that state are also closed. Why? Why? Initially, the ventricles are just from contracting. The ventricles are just from contracting. During ventricular contraction, the atrioventricular valves, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles, are going to shut close due to the increased pressure which will shut them close, creating that sound loud. They are going to shut close to prevent backflow of blood into the atrium. Whereas the semilunar valves are going to be open. Now in this state, both the atria and the ventricles are relaxed. Blood is trying to come back to the ventricle from the arteries, the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So it is shutting the semilunar valve close, making that sound dub, dub. At that point, blood is now, we are having what we call arterial filling. The atriums are being filled with blood. The atriums are being filled with blood. Blood is filling up into the atriums. both from the superior and inferior vena cava, and also from the lungs, that is through the pulmonary veins, the 4 pulmonary veins. They are filling within the left and right atriums. So blood is filling up. So it means the volume, when we try to consider our atrium, here we are considering only the left atrium. We are saying that the volume in the atrium, the volume of blood, rather the pressure in the atrium, because blood is entering the atrium, so volume is reducing, which will result into increased pressure. So the pressure in the atrium, initially it was low. So our atrioventricular node, the atrial valves, the atrioventricular valves, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles are going to be closed. They are closed. So when the pressure starts rising, at that same point, the pressure within the ventricles is rapidly lowering. We have just had entire contraction of the ventricles here before this. So the pressure rapidly had to lower. The ventricles sent off their blood. So they are relaxed now. So the pressure will lower. And a point is going to come, this point, where the atrial pressure, the pressure within the atrium, the atrial pressure is going to be it's going to be higher than. The atrial pressure is going to be higher than, the one in black, is going to be higher than the ventricular pressure. And at this point, when the atrial pressure becomes higher than the ventricular pressure, the pressure in the atrium is higher than the pressure in the ventricle. That is going to mean that it is going to force the atrioventricular valves, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles, open. The atrioventricular valves are going to be forced open by the blood, because pressure is increasing. Pressure in the atrium is increasing. Blood is increasing in the atrium. Blood is increasing, resulting into increased pressure. So this will result into opening the atrioventricular valves. So the atrioventricular valves are going to be opened here. And when they are opened, so here they are going to be opened, the atrioventricular valves. And as soon as they are opened, we are going to have rapid ventricular filling. Blood is going to rush into the ventricles at a very high speed. At a very high speed. And as it rushes into the ventricles at a very high speed, the pressure in the ventricles will start raising. So here we had, first of all, the pressure in the atrium has become higher than the pressure in the ventricles. So the atrioventricular valves have been opened and blood is rushing into the ventricles. As blood rushes into the ventricles, the blood in the atrium is going to reduce. Therefore, the atrial pressure is going to start lowering. I think you can see. The atrial pressure will start lowering, the one in black, whereas the ventricular pressure is going to start raising. Why? It's going to start raising because blood is moving into the ventricles. Volume is reducing in the ventricles, which result into increased pressure in the ventricles. And a point is going to be reached where both the atrial pressure and the ventricular pressure, the pressure in the atrium and the ventricles, where both the pressure in the atrium and the ventricles is going to be equal. When both the pressure in the atrium and the ventricles is equal, at this state here, both the pressure in the atrium and the ventricles are equal, we are going to have a condition known as diastasis. And in diastasis, and in this condition known as diastasis, in diastasis, we are going to be having, we are still having ventricular filling, but the ventricular filling is very slow. It is extremely slow. Very small volumes of blood are moving into the ventricles. It is free fall, but on a very slow rate. Blood is still moving from the atrium to the ventricle, but it is almost not moving. So, at this point, what is going to happen, when you go back to our electrocardiogram, right now, so we would have reached this point. And here we are seeing that we have reached the P wave. At the P wave, a nerve impulse has been released by the sinoatrial node into the atrial walls, the atrial myocardium. And the atrial myocardium, the atrial cardiac tissue, is contracting. So it is undergoing depolarization. So it is being depolarized. And when the atrial cardiac tissue is depolarized, it contracts immediately. When it contracts, the atrium are going to contract. It means we are going to have a state known as atrial kick. So in this atrial kick, here we are having, if we look at the pressure, comparing the pressure in the atrium and the ventricles, we are having it's now equal. And the atrioventricular valve are still open. The semilunar valves have been closed because blood was trying to undergo regurgitation, it was trying to backflow. So they shut them closed, making that sound dark. So at this time here, at this point, here, at the P wave, the atrial myocardium has undergone depolarization. It is contracting. As soon as it contracts, it is going to increase the pressure. So as it contracts, the volume is going to actually, immediately, when it contracts, the pressure within the atrium increases. So when the pressure within the atrium increases, so you can see this is our atrium. During the P wave, depolarization, therefore the atrium will contract and the pressure will increase. The pressure in the atrium immediately increases. So you can see it is increasing and it becomes higher than the pressure in the ventricles. So the pressure in the atrium increases when the atrium are contracting, it becoming higher than the pressure in the ventricles. This is very important because it gives time, it gives that push up of complete ventricular feeling here. It is called the atrial kick. All the blood that was remaining in the atriums is being fully pushed, kicked into the ventricles, And immediately after that atrial kick, the atrium is going to remain contracted. They are still contracted, they are still depolarized. But all the blood has been pushed to the ventricles. So when it is pushed to the ventricles, an equilibrium is attained. So initially, the atrium contracted, the pressure in the atrium became higher than the pressure in the ventricles. The pressure in the atrium became higher than the pressure in the ventricles. So ventricles are slow, making all the blood moving from the atrium to the ventricles. After all the blood moved from the atrium to the ventricles, this will create an equilibrium between the atrium and the ventricle. So both the atrium and the ventricle will be of the same pressure. The pressure in the atrium will be equal to the pressure in the ventricle. Now, when we reach this point, we would have reached the 2RS part of the electrocardiogram. So, at the 2RS, what is happening is that our charge, electronerve impulse, has now reached the ventricles. It has all been collected by the atrioventricular node and it has been sent to the ventricles. So here, the ventricles are depolarized at the 2RS. The ventricles are depolarized. When the ventricles are depolarized, they immediately undergo contraction. They contract the myocardium, rather the ventricular cardiac tissue undergo contraction. So when they undergo contraction, they contract. So when they undergo contraction immediately, what is going to happen is that contractive force, it is going to increase the pressure within the ventricles. The pressure within the ventricles increases. And when the pressure within the ventricles increases, the pressure in the ventricles is going to start increasing, and it will become higher than the pressure. So the pressure in the ventricles will become higher than the pressure in our atrium. So ventricles is in green, atrium is in black. So the pressure in the ventricles will become higher than the pressure in the atrium. When the pressure in the ventricles becomes higher than the pressure in the atrium, blood will try to move from regions of high pressure to regions of low pressure. So blood will try to move back to the atrium. As blood tries to move back in the atrium, because pressure in the ventricle is higher than the pressure in the atrium, that will force the atrioventricular valves, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles, to shut close. The valves between the atrium and the ventricles will be closed up. As blood tries to undergo regurgitation, it tries to undergo backflow from the ventricles to the atrium. So it will shut the atrioventricular valves closed, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles. So when they are shut closed, so you can see it here, the atrioventricular valves are being shut closed here. As soon as the pressure in the ventricles becomes higher than the pressure in the atrium, the atrioventricular valves are shut closed. But this will continue. We are saying that the depolarization is keeping on increasing up to until it reaches its peak R. So the ventricles are continuously becoming more contracted. They are contracting and contracting even more. When they contract even more, the pressure in the ventricles increases even further. As it increases even further, it will reach a point here when the pressure inside the ventricles is going to be very high. It is going to be higher than the pressure in our arteries. That is both the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Here we are only indicating our aorta. So at this point, first of all, initially, our semilunar valves, the valves between the arteries, that is both the pulmonary arteries and the aortic arteries, and the ventricles are still closed. I think you can see they are still closed, they are closed. But when this pressure of the ventricles becomes higher than, surpasses the pressure in the aorta, or rather the pressure in the arteries, both the pulmonary artery and the aortic artery, when it becomes higher, it will force the semilunar valves, the valves, that is semilunar valves, both the pulmonary valve, or rather pulmonary arterial semilunar valves, and the aortic arterial semilunar valves are going to be forced to open. They will open up. I think you can see at this point. And when these valves open up, it will force blood. Blood will start moving into the arteries. Blood will move from the right side of the heart, that is the right ventricle, across the opened pulmonary arterial semilunar valves to the lungs. And when we go to the left side of the heart, blood is going to be moving from the left ventricle, passing across the aortic arterial semilunar valves to the aorta and to the body. So that will be happening. And in this stage, this part of the graph, we can consider it as ventricular ejection. Ventricular ejection. The ventricles are ejecting out blood. Ventricular ejection. So they are ejecting out blood. So this part here, we are having ventricular ejection. So the pressure in the atrium is lower than the pressure in the ventricles. So we have seen the atrioventricular valves are now closed. Yeah, this will continue, and during this during this 2RS graph, also the atrium is undergoing repolarization, but its repolarization cannot be seen on the electrocardiogram because it is being suppressed by the great depolarization from the ventricles. the 2RS. So after that, we shall then have, so first of all, we need to know where this sound lab is coming from. So we have seen here a point will come where the pressure in the ventricles will become higher than the pressure in the atrium at this point. When the pressure in the ventricles becomes higher than the pressure in the atrium, the pressure in the ventricles is increasing up. It will force the atrioventricular valves closed. So as the atrioventricular valves are being closed, the valves between the atrium and the ventricles are being closed. They will make that sound lab, 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 lab. So that's where this sound comes in. I think you can see at this stage. So it happens when the ventricles are contracting. So ventricles contract, making the pressure inside the ventricles higher than the pressure in the atrium, hence forcing the atrioventricular valves closed, making that sound lab as they try to avoid regurgitation of blood into the atrium. Yeah. Now we can continue. So after that, we shall have our ST phase of the graph. Here, the ventricles are now going to undergo repolarization. The ventricles are going to repolarize. So when the ventricles repolarize at this point here, at T, the ventricles are repolarizing. Immediately, the walls of the ventricles, the ventricular myocardium, is going to relax. When the ventricular myocardium relaxes, it will relax. It means the pressure inside the ventricles will start lowering. So we are having here the pressure in the ventricles at maximum peak. Therefore, all the blood is being pushed out of the ventricles to the arteries. Now, when the ventricles repolarize, they will no longer contract. Therefore, the pressure in the ventricles will start lowering rapidly. When the pressure in the ventricles starts lowering rapidly, here, it is rapidly reducing. It will reach a point where the pressure in the ventricles is going to become lower than, immediately as soon as it crosses this point, it is going to become lower than the pressure in the arteries. That is both the pulmonary artery and the aortic artery. So when this pressure in the ventricles becomes lower than the pressure, so I will repeat once again. At T, the ventricles are undergoing repolarization. Therefore, they will no longer be in a state of contraction. They are going to relax. And when they relax, it will imply that the pressure in the ventricles is going to rapidly start lowering. Because initially it was contracted and the pressure was high. So as it relaxes, the volume will increase. The volume inside the ventricles will increase, therefore pressure will lower. So the pressure is going to rapidly start lowering. It's going to rapidly slope downwards. And it will reach a point where the pressure in the ventricles is going to become lower than the pressure in the arteries. That is both the pulmonary artery and the aortic artery. When the pressure in the ventricles becomes lower than the pressure in the arteries, the blood which was moving through the arteries from the ventricles will try to move back to regions. So blood is always going to move from regions of high pressure to regions of low pressure. So when the pressure in the ventricles becomes lower than the pressure in the arteries is indicated with red, blood is going to try to move back to the ventricles. When blood tries to move back to the ventricles, it is the backflow from the arteries to the ventricles of blood is going to be inhibited. It's going to be stopped by a set of valves known as the arterial valves, or rather can be called the semilunar valves. So as the blood tries to move back, it will shut the semilunar, or rather the arterial valves. That is both the pulmonary valves, or rather pulmonary arterial semilunar valves, and the aortic valve, or rather the aortic arterial semilunar valves are going to be shut closed. And I think you can see that on the graph here, on the semilunar valve. You see, at this point, So, at this point here, so at this point the graph may not be so accurate because I used the hand to draw it, but at this point here, when the pressure in the ventricles becomes lower than the pressure in the arteries, the arterial pressure is now higher, it will shut the semilunar valves closed. They will be shut closed because blood is trying to move back to undergo regurgitation, so it will shut those valves closed. Blood. So it is going to be down, down, down. They are going to be shut closed. But our ventricles are further undergoing depolarization. They are becoming more and more and more less contracted. So they are further and further relaxing. So the pressure will continue sloping downwards and lowering until it will reach a point. Where the pressure in the ventricles will turn out to be lower than the pressure in the atrium. And when the pressure in the ventricles turns out to be lower than the pressure in the atrium, it means the atrioventricular valves will open. So we have gone back to this stage here. We have gone back to this stage here. That's where we have gone back. I think you can see. We have gone back to this stage here. So this graph here at this point is indicating one complete cardiac cycle. One complete cardiac cycle. Thank you very much. I'm clinician Rovenance. Don't forget to like and subscribe. To be so grateful to support us as a channel, to create more content. Let's learn together.